Okay, let's get started with the CLI method of deploying your web application on your existing Kubernetes cluster. All right, so I'm going to launch the Azure CLI, move it up a little bit to make enough space for myself in this console, and wait for this CLI to settle down. All right, so now that's ready. So the best part is that you really do not have to install the kubectl command here. So let's give it a shot. You can try the kubectl command on the CLI interface and hit enter and see what happens. If the kubectl command does not exist, of course it will error out, but then it gave a lot of suggestions and syntaxes available with kubectl. That means kubectl is integrated into Azure CLI and you do not have to install this explicitly. All right, so let's clear the screen. What I'm going to do first is to connect to my Kubernetes cluster. The command is AZ-AKS and say get hyphen credentials. Okay. Now, my Kubernetes cluster is in a particular resource group, so I can either do hyphen hyphen resource hyphen group or just type the shortcut here, just say hyphen G. That's also fine. So, what is my resource group name? It's dev.rg, so I'll type it as it is, and then type the name of the cluster, which is hyphen hyphen name, and the name of my cluster is web app hyphen cluster. I'll copy and paste this guy here and hit enter and see what happens. All right, so I've got the context set. So next time, any command that I'm going to run will be running under this context and connecting to this cluster. So this command is really helpful when I am actually running certain commands against a specific cluster. If you have lots of clusters running in your production environment, let's say. Okay, so now I'm going to say kubectl and then say get nodes. So it's going and connecting to web app hyphen cluster and getting the nodes that I have under this. How many nodes do you see? Well, there are 3 nodes. It's exactly the number that you saw under the node section. So if I go to my Kubernetes cluster under node pools, there are 3 nodes, right? That's what we are able to see with the kubectl command. Remember that not everything is manageable using the UI, but yes, the CLI is very powerful and you can manage everything with the help of that. Okay, so I've got 3 of the pools, they're ready, and all of them have the same version. Okay, so now let's go ahead and host that application. What I'm going to do is go to my quick start template, copy this, okay, and then open a file. So for this, you need to know a little bit of Linux, not a lot, but you need to know certain commands called nano editor or how do you open the VI editor, okay? So I will use nano and then type the name of the file, just call it Azure or let's say web app, okay, .yaml, just give it an extension, YML, hit enter, and then you will go ahead and paste it from the clipboard. Okay, so my YAML file is right here. The whole thing has been copied. So just in case you are new to Linux and new to Nano, don't worry. There are a lot of help files available. And then I'm going to follow through these. So just hit Control X on your keyboard to exit out of this. Okay, Control X. And then it says, do you want to save it? Just say Y on the keyboard and hit enter. Okay, so that is saved. So if you do cat to web app.yaml, you should be able to see all your content. That means that this whole content that you see inside this sample web application, this file is inside my file called as webapp.yaml. Now it's time to push or apply this file to my Kubernetes container. How do I do that? Well, I'll clear the screen first and then use kubectl command, use apply, and then I'm going to say apply the contents in my file, which is nothing but azure.yaml. Okay, so that's ready. Hit enter to see what happens now. All right, is there a typo? If I do ls, all right, it's not azure.yaml, it is webapp.yaml. So there was a not a typo but a blunder. Okay, it's a mistake. So web app, this should work now. Okay, so this created a backend for me. All right, services were deployed, deployments is done. So This output really tells me that the deployments and services were created successfully. Now it's time to test the application. Okay, let's do that. How do you test it? Let's use the kubectl command again. So I will say kubectl and say get service, and the name of the service is Azure-vote-back. So I'm gonna copy it as it is to minimize any typos, and then say watch. With this, I'm actually monitoring the progress with the help of the --watch command. And the reason is that it is still being deployed. It is not completed. If it completes, you will find an external IP address. And that's why it is set to none. All right, we now have a public IP here. So it took about 7 to 8 minutes to get that public IP for us. But now that is here, I can just do a Control C to stop the watch here. Okay, so that's stopped. Now I can copy this public IP address, navigate to my browser, and paste it there. And now what you can see is the web application being pulled up from our Kubernetes container. We did not host a virtual machine. We did not host a web app in the app services. This is an application hosted in your containers, on your pods, on your nodes, which is being managed by the Kubernetes cluster. And you can play around these buttons here. It just calculates the number of cats and dogs we have, depending on how many times you click on each one of these buttons, and finally reset that. But just a sample application which then lets us know the power of the Kubernetes cluster. Let's try to understand more options we have inside the AKS. What's important to understand is the monitoring aspect of AKS as well. So if I scroll down to the bottom a little bit and then click on Insights, on the right hand side, you will be able to see several metrics that are related to containers. You can see the total CPU utilization of the node, the memory utilization of the node as well. And as you scroll down, you will find several metrics that will be helpful for you to troubleshoot and identify those performance issues that the developers and the end users are reporting on. If you scroll up to the very top, there's an option to view all the clusters. Once I click on it, it will take me to the containers option. We can then click on the monitored clusters. Now, since we have just one cluster here, I'm able to see just that. But let's say in an enterprise environment, you've got lots of Kubernetes clusters running. You will be able to see all of them in a one single dashboard. So it tells you the health status of all the Kubernetes clusters running in your environment. Okay, so I'll click on this further to show you the power of monitoring and getting insights about it. So now if I click on containers here, okay, so these are all the containers with various namespaces here. The container that we are interested in is the one that we deployed, which is Azure-vote-back. Now you can get more granular statistics about it by clicking on View Live Data. Keep in mind that this is just in preview. It's not fully tested, so be watchful when you're using this option. We cannot fully depend on the options that View Live Data provides. Okay, so eventually it's all about looking at the live data that's being routed to your web application. So if you click on Events, you will be able to see everything that has happened with your web application so far. So 17 minutes ago, the Azure vote-back container was started, created. It also pulled up an image called as Redis image, and this is there inside the YAML file. Let me go back to the YAML file and show it to you. If I scroll down, it does specify somewhere that it is picking up a Redis image. There you go. You have the Redis image right here. Okay, so the image is Redis. Now going back to the cluster here. Now on the right hand side, I will again click on View Container Logs instead of Analytics. Let's just click on that. Now this is something that the Network Operations Center or the developers may also be interested in, to see the entire logs of your application, right? So that is how integration with log analytics really helps. So this screen that you see is coming from the log analytics. Here I'm able to see detailed information about all the changes, configuration changes, connections that have happened and occurred with this container can all be seen here. Okay, these are the detailed logs. So for an application developer, someone who's troubleshooting, these logs are really important. All right, that's about deploying applications in containers. I will go ahead and delete this. So I'll click on Overview, finally click on Delete. And yes, and that is letting me delete my nodes and clusters and everything that we did so far. Hopefully this has been informative to you. Thank you.